Lesson 50, Simple STL Vector Usage. To follow along with this lesson, you will need to create a new console project and add a new file named main.cpp to it, as we did in Lesson 1. A C++ vector is an object that acts like an array. Individual elements in the vector can be accessed with the bracket operator just as we do in an array. However, a vector has more functionality, and most importantly, it resizes automatically to hold as many items as we wish. This tutorial will only go over the basic vector operations so that we can make use of them in upcoming console videos. However, you can find all the vector operations with example code on our website in our C++ STL reference section. In our first program, we give a simple demonstration of how vectors are typically used. We begin by declaring a vector of strings. The vector is a class template, so we need to use a parameter in order to create an instance. Next, we push 4 strings into the vector. These are string literals, which are converted into string objects when they are put into the vector. Since the vector is resizable, we can push as many strings into it as we wish, and the vector will expand to hold them. Oftentimes, we will want to run through all the entries in a vector. To do this, we can declare an iterator that allows us to step through the vector, as we do here. Notice that the iterator takes a parameter, just like the vector. Finally, we have a for loop that demonstrates how to step through the vector to access and output each entry in the vector. First, the iterator is initialized to the value returned from the begin function. Then we advance the iterator once per loop with the ++ operator. This sets the iterator to point to the next item in the vector. The loop then ends when the iterator equals the value returned by end. To access items in the vector, we use the dereference operator just as we would with a pointer. This gives us the item that the iterator points to, so that the strings get printed out along with a space. Executing the program, we see the strings printed with spaces in between. In our second program, we demonstrate the insert function by adding these lines to our first program. This line inserts the string console into the vector at 2 places after the first, or directly after C++. Note that begin returns an iterator to the first entry, and the 2 just advances 2 places beyond it. Finally, we repeat the for loop to output the entries of the vector again. Executing the program, we see the vector before and after the insertion. For our third program, we demonstrate how to remove items from the vector. To do this, we use the erase function. Again, we add these lines of code to our first program. Using iterators, this line erases the items from the second up to the one before the fourth. In other words, it removes C++ and video. Again, we have repeated the for loop to show the resulting vector. Executing the program, we see the vector before and after the removal. One final point. We started out by saying that vectors are like arrays. It turns out that we can access them like arrays too. In addition to using iterators, we can use the array-style bracket notation to access items in a vector with an integer index. In our final program, we demonstrate this with a for loop that is similar to what you would use to access elements of an array. Here we use the size function to get the number of elements in the vector. Executing the program, we see the same output as our first program, but this one does not use iterators.